Hello, everybody. We'll just take a couple of more minutes before we can get started. Thank you for joining on time, all 40 participants who are there. Let's wait for another 3 minutes and then let's get started. Okay. I think we, we should get started. We are a good 5 minutes after 3:30. So let's get started. Welcome and to all of y'all who have come today to attend this session, which is at the brink of the holiday season. Incidentally, it is also exactly 1 month after Samvad, which was the annual account aggregator event. Thank you very much. Today's topic of discussion is fair use in account aggregator, and today's Pragati session is being done in partnership with Finarkin Analytics. Uh, the invitation mail was descriptive enough to ask and kind of instill the thought on why fair use and account aggregator is an imperative discussion at this point of the adoption and growth that account aggregator framework has experienced and is being the way it is being implemented by businesses. Without taking too much time, let me not, tell you some facts. I would ask Shalini Gupta, who is with us here. She's head of policy and strategy in Sehmati, to set the context of this presentation and, you know, uh, give you a peep into some important statistics of account aggregator framework. So, Shalini, over to you now.
Thank you, Ruchi. So a very warm good evening to all of you. And it is a pleasure, and this is a little special and a different session. All the sessions which we have done till now on account aggregator framework are around increasing the usage. But here we are talking of responsible usage of account aggregator. And I'll share some stats with you to that will in itself explain why we need to talk about responsible usage of account aggregator. So today, account aggregator framework, we are seeing a monthly consent, successfully fulfilled consent of around, 8 million per month. And on a cumulative basis, we have crossed 125 million consents. On data usage level, we are at around 100 million plus data pulls every month. So that in itself shows the kind of volumes we are witnessing in the account aggregator framework. Till date, almost 1 lakh crore of loans have been disbursed using account aggregator framework. And if we were to look at the monthly average, we are disbursing around 8,000, 9,000 crore of loans every month using the framework. Likewise, on the PFM, personal finance and wealth management side, we did a survey according to which around 1.5 crore, 15 million customers have been using the PFM services that have been powered by the account aggregator framework. So all in all, we see a big numbers and big growth coming in on the ecosystem. And, not just in terms of the numbers, in terms of the use cases, we have seen expansion in the kind of use cases. So it all started with a plain vanilla underwriting use case, and now we see almost more than 15 plus use cases across underwriting. So each of the four sectors, so not just underwriting, but risk management, monitoring, collections, demat account opening, insurance underwriting. So there is a long list of use cases. So we are at a juncture where we are seeing a lot of usage coming up, a lot of benefits coming to the end users as well as the financial institutions. However, as we say, with growth and with scale, we now need to operate very responsibly in this, primarily because of three reasons. As an ecosystem, we need to ensure that, the way this is building up and getting implemented and being communicated to the customer is really responsible. The reasons we all know, but to recap, one, we are stepping into the era of DPDP Act, which clearly implies that you need to collect information which is, there is a purpose limitation, collection limitation, and storage limitation in the way you are taking a consent for a particular data set from the customer. So you really need to take a step back and think before, asking for more and more information, which is always a delight for product managers and marketing managers. But to say that how much is really needed for my purpose. Point number one. Point number two, obviously, as we build the ecosystem, it is our joint responsibility to ensure that we keep in mind customer protection and responsible lending practices so that no one actually can come back and question as to, you were given this framework to help you with a lot of your business and, customer service, and you've not been able to use it responsibly. So that is something which we need to avoid as an ecosystem. And point number three is, given that, data sharing is happening within the ecosystem and a lot of data is coming from our banks and FIPs, we need to ensure that the load on their system, which anyhow is a lifeline of the Indian financial sector, is kept up to a certain limit and up to only what is required. So, there are multiple factors which are driving the ecosystem towards, ensuring fair use of AI. And before handing over to Geeta, I'll just tell you, about how Sehmati is looking at it. We are working with the ecosystem through various forums and councils to come up with joint rules which are self participatory governance rules which the ecosystem is developing in terms of, the UI UX guidelines or the templates, the kind of data you need or the frequency of data you need for various use cases, as well as, how do you communicate the consent to the customer? How do you avoid dark patterns when you're communicating with the customers? So we have come up with a lot of guidelines which are really important for anyone who is implementing or planning to implement account aggregator. At the same time, people who have already implemented, it is a good time to sit back and review their current implementations and see if they are in line with what the industry is expecting them to be. And like I said, it all ties back to a healthy scale up of the account aggregator ecosystem. So without now, I'll just hand it over to Geeta to take you through the work Sehmati is doing and the resources you need to access and ensure that you comply with as you build your account or get into the account aggregator journey for your organization. So over to you, Geeta.
Thanks, Shamini. Just switching to slideshow. We have a very short window of 20 minutes now to cover everything that Samati has done. But in line with Samati's vision to make not only just about making enabling AA, the focus is more on ensuring there is empowerment for the customer, like Shalini said. So I'll just this is among the various initiatives that we have in place. The one that focuses right now that we are here today is the fair use or the participatory governance that the community has come together, collaborated to work on. This is how we currently have the structure of our governance system that is going on. Right now, we have our advisory council and the governing council, who are like our lighthouse, who guide us on the right direction and the initiatives that we take up. The fair use committee right now falls under the cross-sectoral and different is one among the three committees that we have running alongside the economic and interoperability models that are being discussed by other community. The fair use committee itself is working with various stakeholders, the AAs, FIUs, and FIPs, in order to ensure that there is equal representation from all of them, as well as we are not only fair to the customer in terms of their usage of data, but we are also fair to the business needs of those FIUs as well as the FIPs, like Shalini said, a balance of both is what we are looking at. This is the uh, small percentage of the council members who are working with us. Some of them are with us today on this call as well. We are happy to be working with large banks, large data providers, as well as data users, be it personal finance or wealth management or insurance, and various across sectors we have representation. And this is a healthy mix of different, not only the kind of use cases, but also the size. If you see, we have small startups as well working with us to the likes of SBI, which is like the largest bank in the country. So we have, and you can see Turtlemint, Crazy Beaver. Such organizations are also part of the council to maintain an overall balance in the perspective that brings is brought into the council. So what do we mean by fair use? Like Shalini said, the fair use is not only for the customer, but also for the business who are engaged in using account aggregator. So in order to ensure call anything as fair, we ought to have a benchmarking that says what is good or what is the optimum or what is necessary. Then the same can be then mapped used as a way to match the existing use cases or existing implementation or the usage by various entities, so that we know if there is any deviation, then that can be looked at and we can work towards the correction of those, so that the end customer at the end of this entire pipeline, the end customer is benefiting and is truly empowered by the data sharing that they're doing on the account aggregator framework. So we follow the principles of 3D, uh, define, detect, and deter. To call anything good, you need to be able to measure it and define the measuring criteria or the benchmark. Once you have, then once you know what you're measuring, each of these implementations or the use cases or the applications, then we can measure it against the definition and detect if there is any error or any deviation, and deter. Deter could also be not only just flag them and say, hey, you're doing something wrong, but it also could be educating them and saying that you can do this in a different way, or maybe our own definition doesn't consider all scenarios, go back to our definition and get things refined there. So all these measures are being taken up, and there are multiple outcomes of our initiatives along with different collaborators. We have a good due diligence process before somebody is onboarded. We have a customer experience checklist which is shared with the FIUs to ensure they not only educate the customer but also safeguard the customer rights as per the regulations, right? And there is our fair use templates, which we will discuss in a bit. And then we have design guidelines. And also we have standard codes of conduct and various guidelines, technical as well as non-technical, that can be implemented in order to ensure, the customer is at the core of this entire journey. So the first initiative that we will be discussing today is that of the fair use template library. This is a collaborative effort that we started way long back last year, along with some, various market participants who came together and said, we need to standardize the use cases, the implementation. The customer needs to be made aware of various use cases that are there and what kind of you know, uh, what is the expectation from the customer in terms of each of these use cases. So right now there are 5 purpose codes that are listed in the regulator. This is part of the consent artifact that is anyway published by that is the basic consent that is signed by the customer. The customer has to be made explicitly aware of the purpose for which the consent is being taken. So Rabbit has classified it under 5 different categories, but out of these, various other use cases have emerged. We saw initially some 20 to 40 use cases. Over time, it could all be standardized and bucketed into the top 15 use cases as of today. Out of that, we've been able to manage to finalize and publish consent templates for 9 of them. You can see a mapping of what Revit had shared versus the different templates that we have finalized. We'll go to the part of what does a consent mean. Template mean. So what does a consent template, fair use template mean here is, it just defines the maximum values or the upper bounds for each of the use cases that you are looking at for a particular use case for which the customer is giving the consent. Now, these are the standard parameters that you see on the left side. What you see under orange is all the template that the committee has been able to finalize. And on the blue, you see the template that actually the customer sees. So that basically, let me go through each field, because the fields are what actually is being defined by Rabbit. But the values in the field, or the upper bound of these values in the fields, are what is being defined by the use case council. So let's take an example of wealth management services. The purpose code as per Rabbit and as per the template also is 101. It comes under the purpose category of personal finance. The types of FI data types that are allowed within this category is deposit term, deposit recurring, and all the other. This includes both the RBI statement and bank statements and the SEBI related investment details that are needed for wealth management. And the consent type is whether you're asking the customer to give profile, summary, or transaction. In this case, all 3 are needed. Let's say you're doing a collection use case where you're only looking at the field balance field, then you wouldn't need profile or transaction. Just request for summary. So that is a different use case. But for this use case, the FIUs would need any change in profile, any change in all the transactions that the customer does, all the information they would need. So that has been included in this. It is an upper value. It's a maximum. If your product is such that you don't need profile, by all means, just take only summary and transaction. On an incremental basis, you don't want to pull transaction, it is pull the summary, it is up to you. As long as you have, once a consent artifact is assigned, it cannot be modified. But if you have various use cases, various personas of your customer, and you want to modify the template according to those personas, you can do. This is the upper bound or upper limit is what is being said. So in you can add your questions on the QA. We'll take it at we'll take it at a later point. I'll just explain the screen and then I'll take it. So the fetch type is just one second later. Yeah, the fetch type is periodic in this case. It's not a one-time fetch because it's a recurring use case that we all know. And the maximum frequency we mentioned here is 31 per. This is based on, there is a rationale around this and it's published on our website as well. This is based on the assumption that every day the value is being pulled. Let's say it's a portfolio manager who wants to rebalance your portfolio and they are looking at or doing a risk assessment of your portfolio. Every day they pull the information, and on non-trading days, you wouldn't need to pull, right? But a buffer of another 5 days has been added to this to support any kind of, any failure or change in transactions that they need to be updated. So that's how the maximum frequency was arrived at. And the data range for which the statement is pulled is maximum is 13 months. If you go beyond 13 months, some of the 13 months for the non-SEBI FI types. What I mean by non-SEBI FI types is the deposit and term deposit. They right now give up to 13 months, and that is good enough range to assess the lifestyle or assess the risk appetite of the customer is what those who are doing wealth management services have, given the rationale as to arrive at the 13 months. Similarly, for SEBI FI types, it has been mentioned as 10 years. 10 years, but not at one go. The depositories are providing data up to maximum 2 years in one pool, but you might have to pull 5 times to get the data, but you will get the data for the last 10 years in order to build more information on the customer. And the maximum consent validity for such a use case in this particular case has been mentioned as 1 year. While in loan, you will have the loan product and it's an ongoing product, or it has a set expiry date, which is easy to map to the consent validity. In some of these services, the customer agreement happens to be 1 year, or it is rotated on a yearly basis, and that was taken as a basis for making it consent validity as 1 year. And data life is considered to be 1 month, the time within which the FIU will be able to process and consume data. So this is the upper bound that is mentioned in the template, and the same has been communicated to the customer on the right side, what you see. Similarly, we have other use cases also that have been done. So what has this library done to all the market participants? Basically, the entire library has now 9, right? All of them have been able to help the FIUs in standardizing the implementation. It builds a trust in the customer. When they see a consent for loan, they know on whether they are in one FIU, one lender versus the other. The consent appears to be more or less the same. Maybe the period of the tenure of the loan might change and the consent validity might change, but apart from that, everything else is more or less the same. And so there's a confidence built in the customer that they'll be able to, that this is a genuine use case for a consent for a loan monitoring or a loan underwriting. That is one part we are handling, and the other part also is to ensure there is, proper implementation at the FIU end also. Previously, we'll take an example of PFM where we had purpose codes being interchanged. The number of pulls were not set. There were very high pulls from some FIUs versus the other. And the consent validity was too long, where the customer would have even forgotten that they gave a consent, and even the data life was too long. So this is now harmonized. What you see in green is the reduced values. And so Is there a question that I should take, Ruchi? You need to let me know. Okay.
I think we'll take all the questions at the end, Geeta.
Yeah, seems so. Okay. I'm already just 4 minutes away. So I'll just walk you through very quickly the 9 templates what we have. 101 is for borrower loan application. It is for underwriting basically the loan application. It is for 103 purpose code is what being used. The other parameters are also on our website. I'll just take you through the use cases so that you get an idea of the templates that are being built. Then we have 103, which is for loan monitoring. And this is a recurring use case with purpose code 104 with a maximum frequency of 5 per month. Then we have loan collection, which is applicable only if there is a default. It is again 104, but if you see the consent type is just summary. You're only pulling the balance of a deposit account, that too. And the frequency is not more than once, and even the data range is just once, just to see the balance before doing the collection. And wealth management we discussed in depth. And then we had spend analytics, which is different from wealth management. There it's more on wealth management and advisory kind of a use case. Here it is 360-degree view of the customer to generate insights for them. It's more of a finance, personal finance management use case. This is 102, and this has a limit of 45 to 45 per month compared to this 31. The main difference here being to provide, you know, the PFM use cases may not be able to provide wealth management advisory services, which is a very clearly defined term as per regulators. So all wealth management services have been bucketed under 101, and non-wealth management ones are in 102, where they're still doing some kind of a personal finance management. They're supporting the customer, but it's exactly not wealth management. And we have a template for insurance underwriting as well, which is 103, and it's a one-time use case similar to loan underwriting. Then there are several instances where there needs to be bank account verification. It could be under any license, it could be under any scenario. It can be with the employees, customer, vendor. It could be under any regulatory scenario that you can think of. You're mandated to verify the bank account of an individual. That can be done through AA using this template. This is 105 is an explicit one-time consent for querying the account. And right now, this requires where you can verify the account type of a customer or get their details. You wouldn't need more details of the transactions or anything. You would just need the profile and the summary. So this use case has been elaborated in this template. We have similar to monitoring of customers in a loan case. We also have cases where you might have vendors who are doing the collection, or you might have agents whose financials is being secured on a regular basis. Even AI can be used for this to generate insights of those employees. I think there is an error in this table, but yeah, this I think there is an error in there seems to be an overlap of 108, but we have a template published on the website where we have the upper bounds for this as well. And lastly, we have this is a recent use case that has come across where the employers are, asking for consent from employees in order to monitor their holdings and investments. This is particularly needed under, SEBI entities where there is a lot of regulatory and compliance requirement on the reporting of the employees' investments. This has been finalized recently. And then we have, I think this is the end of all the templates that have been published so far. And we also have published a lot of code of conduct around these templates on the to ensure that the usage is much more tightened. Any gaps in the templates can be filled with the technical guidelines that have been published. they are available on our website. You can just have a look at it. I'll walk you through with just one more design guideline. I'll take 4 more minutes, which before the questions. I'll just walk you through all to the design guideline that is published. We have customer experience guidelines and design guidelines that the FIUs can adopt, and AAs and FIUs can adopt to ensure there is more user trust, and the screens are usable, and it helps the customer in giving a proper consent. So in that spirit, if you look at it, the design report guideline report is published, but we'll give you a couple of examples of how we have been able to ensure that there is proper explanation. So this is an example where the consent screen, if you look at it, has very minimum attributes given on the consent screen. Customer doesn't know that he is giving a consent, and it is also providing a button at the bottom, which is an auto submit. If the customer stays 10 seconds on the screen, it is implied that he's giving a consent, which is completely opposite to the explicit and informed consent principle that is underlying in the AA master direction as well as the DPDP. So once we were able to intervene, the template, the consent screen was modified in this manner. If you look at the one on the right side, it clearly shows that the there is a reject button, there is a submit button. Where the customer has on his own is able to decline, understands the terms of the consent that he's giving, he or she is giving, and then decline the consent if they want to. Then we have uh, another example where again the account linking was considered default as a consent, and if you look at the wordings also, it says submit and activate, which for the customer, he doesn't even realize that he is giving a consent. He might as well be linking the account, and he's in that state. In the top of the screen, you can say link the bank account. It doesn't say anything about the template. So that has been modified. And then we have, one second. Yeah. Then we have another template which talks about dual consent being taken on the same screen. But the moment dual consent is taken, the customer actually does not have a choice to accept or reject either of them. He has to, is forced to accept both, which again is not an explicit consent. He's been forced to give two consents at one go. This has been modified to show here. If you see the FIU, the AA has given the two checkbox where the customer can select whichever consent they want to approve and then move forward. So there are various such initiatives we have taken. We have worked with the FIUs in more than 20 cases where we've tried to ensure that the journeys are aligned, 60 journeys are aligned, and any kind of small deviation, tweaks here and there, we consult them to ensure that the customer is truly and giving explicit and informed consent in a true manner. We've also looked at the licenses who can onboard on AA, which is typically the what is allowed as per master direction is only the 5 FSRs. Anyone who's both registered and regulated are part of that. And uh, any licenses inadvertently, there are entities who would want to join account framework. We do go through the process of understanding their license to ensure that they are aligned with the regulations here. We don't reject the use cases, we don't accept the use case or try to map the charter or the use case applicability of the license. Here we are just saying that the license itself was not applicable. It's a withdrawn license, a subgrouper license. So even the user was not aware, and because all the regulations were not made available for them for the FIU, so we had to educate them. So such initiatives, and the other one I wanted to briefly touch on is the guidelines that we have for the redirection guidelines and the SDK guidelines. These are already there in our GitHub. Anytime you have any questions, you're free to reach out to us and we can help with that. I'll just take the questions very quickly.
Geeta, I think you can explain the fair use framework also, no? The technical implementation. This
Yeah.
is, I think, just spend 2 minutes here. This is important for them to know.
Yeah, so now that we've defined and Samati is doing one-off audit of the screens and we are working on improving the screens and other things. But what happens when there are millions of requests, like we've crossed 100 million. So when there are millions of requests, how do we ensure adherence to the guideline that has already been issued? We are working on a set of APIs that can help the AAs detect any FI request and consent requests that are in deviation, and then they can choose either to block. Right now, most of the AAs are agreeing to block such deviations. So if there is any other implementation that we can think of, we will do that as well, yeah, as per the whatever the community decides. And the basic idea is to ensure to empower the AA to be able to detect using these APIs such that any deviations is caught at the very beginning and then that doesn't go through or a corrective action is taken. These APIs are designed and the library is anyway available in the API form, but the implementation of this is still pending. We are looking forward uh, to whatever is the requirement to finish this, and then we'll be able to implement this for all the AIs. So this is in the roadmap. It's not uh, live yet, but we are working on this. I think we'll go to questions, Shalini. We have,
Sure.
yeah. So if experience is disrupted, the business operations are impacted with certain FIPs, the needed damages. So what you're talking about is on the FIP side. FIP non-performance, they are denying the data and it is disrupted. Shalini, you want to take this?
Yeah, sure.
Say
No,
again.
so, there are multiple, ways to look at it. One is, right now, the way FIPs are looking at it, we find that all of them are supportive and they understand that they are, helping the customer access their own data. So this data belongs to the customers and the FIPs are obligated to allow them to share this data using the account aggregator channel. But for a few large banks, we also need to understand that these are large banks with existing systems and workings. So some of them are taking some time to address the technical challenges, and that is where we are currently. Having said that, we also understand that there is a need to have a standard code of conduct for the FIPs as well, and that's something like the fair use has worked on improving the code of conduct, compliance, adherence to best practices for FIUs. We are planning to start a similar initiative on the FIP side to ensure that all of them are working with a standard code of conduct which reduces or minimizes the chances of denial of service or experience to the customer. And that is something which we'll focus on over the next 6 months, and we'll see some good improvement coming from there. Does that answer the question?
I think it's anonymous attendee. I can't
Sure,
switch the
sure.
on. Yeah. So I hope it answers. And then we observe that one-time periodic consent is consumed even if data retrieval fails due to FIP issues, and the consent count varies across different FIPs. I'm not too sure what it means because the consent usage count depends on the customer. It has nothing to do with FIPs. Okay, I'll come back to this question. If you can raise your hands, we can discuss this again. Any fair use in lending, Shalini? What are the, please throw some light on it. I think we covered this. There are
Yeah.
3 templates right now. I think there are 5 templates in all. 3 for customers and 2 for vendors and the recovery agents. 3 of them, what we have on the customers is 1 for underwriting, then we have for loan monitoring, and then we have 1 more for loan collection. Loan monitoring template has to be used only if there is an active loan, and loan collection loan collection template is used only when there's a default, and the default we have defined as more than the NPA days, what we have, the even 1 day beyond the due date is considered as default. So any default after that, you can use those consents is what we have. And on the recovery, and for the recovery agents and the vendors who work with the a lending agency, it can be NBFCs or banks. You do have a set of vendors or recovery agents whom you track regularly. You can also take consents from them to. There are examples of such institutions also being subject to monitoring based on consent. Are these changes implemented at AA level and at FIU individual level? It is being implemented. It is not across AA, but across the AA network. But yes, we have had implementation at some of the FIUs and AA. You will hear with the RTSPs talking about what kind of solutions are being built around this for the FIUs to be compliant also. Then we have the regulatory. What is the difference between personal finance and wealth management? Falls under RIA, risk registered investment advisor, falls under both. If they are providing wealth management services, they are under wealth management service. If they are not providing that, then they are under personal finance management.
So basically, the way we have distinguished is that any entity which has a charter of providing advisory services, such as that of a RIA, and if they are in fact providing advisory, they may use 101. But for all other entities where the primary purpose is only to give some sort of a dashboard to the customer to manage their finances. So important thing to note is that in 102, the primary objective is to give an analytical dashboard to the customer and not advising, and to add any incidental recommendations at a coming basis the analysis done on the customer's data. So the first one is purely 101 is an advisory purpose code limited only to entities who have an advisory charter with a fiduciary responsibility towards the customer, and they are paid by the customer for availing advisory services. And 102 is clearly for use cases where the idea is to just empower the customer, have more control over their finances via analytics dashboard, and in the process, as a way as allowed by your respective charter, give additional recommendations. For example, if you're allowed to give advisory only related to insurance or recommendation, that can be an outcome of 102, a secondary outcome. But that is how the councils have distinguished the two purpose codes.
Yeah. Sabia, I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Yeah. So, okay, I think we've answered every question. Does all bank participate to be FIP? So as of now, all
Shalini,
large banks you've
there are a
answered.
couple, yeah, there are a couple more questions which says, do we take it now or do we move on to
No,
the?
how much time do we have? Actually, Ruchi will need to guide us.
It's
Ruchi,
exactly 4:15, but I think we can take another 2-3 minutes because we just have a couple of more questions, not many. So let's answer those questions, Geet. It's 4:15 sessions. I mean, 4
For
is
10.
when our next session starts, but let's just take a couple of more questions and then.
Okay. You cut me off whenever you feel we need to stop. This consent validity of 10-year are given, old ones, and someone is fearing that their data is being misused. So what can we do about it? Actually, more than Samati, I think you yourself can revoke it at any time. That's the beauty of the consent architecture, that if you fear your data is being misused, you can revoke your consent. As long as you're not taking a service that is going to disrupt the relationship with your FIU. If you are worried about it, please do revoke. Yeah, and from user perspective, what is the difference between FIP linking versus providing customer? From a user perspective, FIP is they're linking an account, right? They're not providing consent yet. They may or may not provide consent for all the accounts that they want to link. So, won't it be more user friendly? The user provides OTP for consent and linking happens implicitly.
No,
Linking
so the
can be
linking,
implicit,
yeah.
consent can't be. Linking may, I
No,
won't
even
debate
linking
that.
cannot be implicit because it
Implicit.
is the responsibility of the FIP to ensure that it is the customer who is himself linking the account to a AA handle. And hence, it cannot be implicit. It has to be an explicit process, and the FIP needs to authenticate that the customer is linking voluntarily linking their account to the AA handle. So I think as a customer facing journey, it has to be kept aligned to the customer protection principles and guidelines. It is very similar to what is happening in the UPI world. In fact, in UPI, every transaction you need to give a OTP, which is not required in the case of account aggregator. Here, once you've linked the account, the consent can still be given at a single tap of a button.
Yeah. So, one more thing, they saw a screen which had two data range, but in only one screen. We were only drawing parallel between the template and the screen. But if you're taking two different ranges, you will end up having two different consents, which is the case that we see in the industry right now. For
Yeah.
SEBI, we take another consent. Yeah, and uh, given the high level technical, are there high level technical, if any, from the
This we have shared.
it's there, it's in the website. Do all the FIPs participate in this? AA is not mandatory for FIPs, but most banks are already there on AA already. SBI, Maharashtra Bank, all of them are there. The large
So
ones,
all
all
public sector banks, all and most of the large private sector banks and all regional rural banks are already on account aggregator. So we have a coverage of around 60-70% of the deposit base of the country on account aggregator.
and which licenses do normally use. It is typically the SEBI entities, the stockbrokers, investment uh, RIAs. Those are the ones that that's
No,
all.
102, yeah, and even
102
the banks, and so basically
banks, yeah.
anyone who intends to give a personal finance. Yeah.
Okay, I think yeah, we've quite
Right.
overshot, but it's been very I think informative session, and we've got some interesting questions as well. Thank you so much, Shadani. Thank you so much, Geeta. All the attendees, if you need to get any further information on what was presented today, please reach out to us at info@sahmati.org.in. We're always available to answer any questions. Thank you very much. With that, we move on to the next session of next part of today's session, which is a presentation by the technology service provider FinFactor. So we have two presentations back to back. One is by FinFactor, followed by another presentation by Setu. What are they going to present? What they are going to present today is how they have embedded some of these fair use, these best practice recommendations and fair use recommendations into their products and services to enable the FIUs to to actually follow best practices and code of conduct decided by the ecosystem. So you will actually see a practical implementation of what theoretically has been decided so far. So Arun and Vishwas from FinFactor, I would like you all to please start your video and take over the presentation.
Sure,
Oh, I'm sorry,
thanks.
it is Vishwa. Sorry, it is not Vishwas. It's Vishwa. Sorry,
It's
Vishwa.
Vishwa, yes. No issues.
Please
Okay,
carry on. Yeah.
sure. Let me just share the screen. Yep. So hi everyone. So I'm Arun from FinFactor Technologies. So I work as a product manager. I take care of both lending piece and the AA gateway products that we currently have. So today we want to showcase that what currently we have implemented in production, that we in place, that whatever values that we are following it up. So we are showcasing those things. So these are already live in the ecosystem. We are just trying to showcase what are we doing on those things. So before jumping into that, we want to showcase that what FinFactor does. So currently FinFactor is a TSP solution. So we partner with multiple AS, one of our major partner being FinView. So we are already live with 100 plus entities, both on the FIP and the FIU side. So 100 plus entities, including large banks, RIAs, NBFCs, stockbrokers, and everything. So we are being into multiple use cases as well. So we are doing loan underwriting, monitoring, insurance underwriting. So we are into insider trading pieces as well. So this is a short background of what FinFactor does as a TSP solution. So coming on to the product stacks, so I just want to give a broad idea of what products that we currently have in our ecosystem. So first is the AA Connect Gateway solution. So that is the TSP solution. So which is one between FIU to AA to collect the data from the ecosystem where our FinSense solution comes into the picture. So where we have multi-AA integration, we can integrate with multiple AAs, route traffic based on the performance. We have a multiple other features as well, which includes data cleaning, converting data into multiple structures as well. So then we have a Connect Hub solution, which is mostly for the FIPs to share the data into the ecosystem. We are live with large banks and insurance entities, helping them to share the data into the ecosystem as per the Rebit standard. So then after the raw data is fetched, then comes our enrichment layer, which is Prism. So which is our own LLM based transaction categorization. So which categorizes the statements into multiple things, majorly on the bank statement. So for the market data as well, we integrate with other third-party service providers who give other insights, which will be integrated into the AA data to give a broad over-level data that you can collect it from us. So on top of the data enrichment layer, we have two major products. One is lending side and then the wealth side, which we call it as Landscape and Wealthscape. So inside Landscape, we have two products. One is like for loan underwriting purpose, where we have our own analyzers, which will give transaction level categorization and parameters for loan underwriting. So for salaried as well as non-salaried and MSME customers. So then we have our dedicated module called Sentinel, which helps you to do a collection and loan monitoring services as well. So then we have a wealth infra where mostly used by the wealth management and personal finance management to we will give insights for cross-sell, upsell, and give nudges, and we have cohort-based systems. So moving on to the next thing. So this is a current metrics that we want to showcase that how FinSense as a module is performing. So this is the like traffic that we are currently seeing it in today. We are doing nearly 5 million data fetches per day, and we see around 350,000 um, uh, peak consent requests that has been flowing in an hour. And we see a overall success percentage of 85 across all the data providers. So to focus on the fair use guidelines, we partner majorly with our AA provider, which is the FinView. So which we constantly interact and develop solutions to you like put this fair use guidelines in practice. Let me just let Vishwa will take over this after this. So she will guide you what FinView as a service provider who has implemented this fair use guideline in the AA ecosystem. Vishwa, over to you.
Yes, yes. Thanks, Arun. Yeah. So, hi everyone. Good evening. I'm Vishwa and I'm the product manager at FinView AA. So, as Arun mentioned, we at FinView have been taking efforts since 1.5 years to foster a culture of good data governance. And Consent Guard is a product on those lines. So, what Consent Guard does is basically is an enabler of the fair use guidelines, the fair use templates that Samiti has released. And we launched this product in April 2024, and since then Consent Guard has been rejecting consents are that the FIUs raise, and before it even reaches to the customers, we check it against some rule sets which I will describe now, and we reject the consents if they are not adhering to the Samiti's templates. Yeah. So, can you just go back, Arun? Yeah. So, our main aim through Consent Guard is to, act responsibly and to uphold customers' data privacy rights. Yeah. So, next slide. Okay. So, that being said, let us actually look at how we have implemented this consent guard and the technicalities behind that. So, as Geeta also mentioned, there are 5 different types of purpose codes, and Samati has launched 9 different fair use templates. So, as we know, there is not a one-to-one mapping between these templates and between the purpose code. So, that is also one thing that we have kept in mind while defining all the rule sets. But basically, what we do is for each template, we flatten the each template into a FinView rule set. So as you can see, for the first row, let's say we have a wealth management template for 101 purpose code. So it is flattened, and the key columns that we have are FIO ID, FIP ID, the purpose code, the FI type, and the rejection rule. So let's say for a particular wealth management 101 purpose code template, we have set a frequency value of 31 times per month. So then in the rejection rules for frequency month, we say it is, here it is 45 per times per month. So we say that 45 times per month we will allow, and that is the outer bound. So if any consent request that you are getting whose frequency value per month is out of this particular limit, then we will reject that consent request. Okay. So, yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, we do not have a one-to-one mapping between the purpose code and between the Sematis templates. So, how do we actually handle those scenarios, right? So, as you know that under 103 purpose code, there can be a lending use case and then can be a non-lending use case as well. So, in such cases, any consent request that is coming to us, we check the 2 things. We firstly check what is the purpose code of the consent request that is mentioned in the consent request, and the second thing we check is the FIU which is sending in the consent request, and what is the license type of that FIU. And based on these 2 checks, we then pass that particular consent request into the different rule sets that we have defined. Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, these consent requests are checked before showing the consent to the customer. So, whenever an FIU or a TSP raises a consent request through the slash consent API call, at that time it comes to FinView. And if we see that for a particular consent request, the values in the parameters are not adhering to the Sematis templates, then we straight away reject that particular consent request. So, yeah, in this table, as you can see, we have provided validations to the parameters that are listed in the table. So currently, we validate maximum frequency and the data life parameter, and other parameters as listed: the fetch type, consent validity, data range. These parameters we have developed, but we are currently not applying validation on those parameters, and but we'll be starting to apply the validations from January 1st, 2025. So, yeah, I'll just take a pause and see if there are any questions on the implementation front. Okay, so if there are no questions, I'll hand it over to Arun. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
So, as a part of Infactor, we also do some pre-checks and guide customers on how the ecosystem has to be used. So, whenever a client approach Finfactor, first we understand their license. We educate them what are the applicable use cases they can do, what are the parameters that are allowed. So, those kind of things, as a Finfactor technologies, we initiated, we do those things. So, as a onboarding process, whenever client comes in, we educate them on each field of the consent parameters, what are allowed, what are not allowed, what are the definition for each parameters. So we also give a provision for the clients to modify the text so that they can educate customer properly, saying that for what purpose they are trying to take the data. So we know this fair use guidelines will evolve frequently, and the changes that has been made has to be changed, accommodated in the system as well. So we are streamlining the process where our existing clients, we'll try to tell them, educate them, transfer this knowledge to them, get it changed and pushed it across the system. So we take care all of the things in the onboarding stages with the clients to help them to have this use cases and the parameters properly set up as per the fair use guidelines. Yeah. So that's all from our side. So if you have any questions, you can ask us.
Arun, Vishwa, maybe you would like to just leave your email IDs in the chat
Sure.
box in case people have any questions later or need to connect with you all for this product, they can get in touch with you directly.
Sure. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so Arun and Vishwa both are around for some time in this session. So if you all have any questions which you all can't think of right now and would like to ask later, please ping them directly or reach out to them on their email. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, both of you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ruchi.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Okay, so with that, we move on to our next presentation, which is by Setu. Okay, there is one question, Vishwa, if you would like to take. It is, asked in the Q&A box. Somebody has asked, how does the consent guard affect your overall data fetch success rates? As denying requests based on consents might seem like a failure to the end customer.
So yeah, as I mentioned, we do not show this consents to the customer. So as an FIU raises a consent request through /consent API call, we have not provided the consent handle ID. We check the consent request against all the rules, and if a consent request does not is let's say deviating from the rules, then we reject the consent request. So before even showing a particular consent request to a customer, the rejection is done, and hence the customer wouldn't even know that the consent has been that they have given the consent request. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, I mean, he hasn't asked. It was an anonymous question, so if he hasn't asked again, then it answers. But nonetheless, they will reach out to you all directly. Arun has left his email ID in the chat box. Okay. So with that, I would like to request the Setu team, Atreya and Rahul. Atreya, if Rahul is also there, please, he could also start his video.
Hi,
Hi.
Richard. I'm not too sure if Rahul will be able to join today, but I think I can take the presentation and the demo.
Just a little this thing, because there is reflection coming from the background, just very
Let me
little.
actually
If you can go
just
towards the wall, it would be good.
switch
Just
around.
switch sides. Yes,
Oh,
this is
yeah.
much better.
Yeah,
This
I
is
think
much
better.
this is much better.
Sorry to interject, Ruchi. I am only able to send the messages to host and panelists and not to the attendees.
Okay, you send it to me. I'll forward it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So Atreya, I'll leave the stage to you now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. Super excited to be presenting our fair use solution and just giving you a quick overview of what we do. I'll spend just a short amount of time explaining who we are, what we do, and a few other things related to Setu. Post that, I will focus on a bit of a show and tell demo. I'll actually walk you through our developer docs, our dashboard called the bridge, right? And also how it looks to our onboarding and customer success teams, how we actually work with you in order to ensure that consent parameters and the way you set up your account aggregator flows are suitable to you, as well as the fact that you ensure that there is fair use implementation and the guidelines are adhered to, and your end customers also see this in a fair light, right? Without further ado, I'm gonna very quickly share my screen. I hope you're able to see my screen. Okay. What I'll do is
Yes, it's visible. It's visible.
Okay. So just very quickly, I think I work for Setu, which is an API infrastructure player. We're here to reimagine financial services for the next billion. We are a part of the Pine Labs group. We got acquired in 2022, and we work on a range of fintech infrastructure, but it's across India stack. So think BBPS, UPI, Aadhaar-based KYC, a KYC stack, a data stack, and then of course account aggregation, as well as insights, bank statement analysis, and a few other products in our ambit, right? We work with some of the largest financial services players in the country. You could think about banks on lending products, specifically on underwriting, collections, and a variety of use cases across the lending use cycle, from onboarding that customer all the way to cross-selling and upselling and collections. On the investment side, especially with the brokerage community, so we are one of the biggest players in terms of KYC, as well as account aggregation for futures and options, and a host of others. Personal finance management, of course, is another big part we play in this ecosystem. So there are a range of use cases. Specifically in lending, we focus on a lot of opportunity areas where we know there is need for compliance solutions, of which fair use demo will be one of them. Dealing with fraud, dealing with underwriting, dealing with, effectively understanding people's income, as well as collections once you've actually disbursed a loan, right? Just moving ahead, we have this product called the AA Gateway, and that's particularly what I'll talk to you about today. We are a TSP in the AA ecosystem. We work especially with FIUs, of which I think there are a lot here, and help them, one, get onto the AA ecosystem, so onboard you in the fastest time possible. We help you effectively get the highest consent conversion rates, as well as improve your data fetch conversions as well. Post that, we work on the insights layer as well, where there's a data vault. We work on a bunch of ML models and AI models to help you with identity solutions, verification solutions, underwriting, cross-selling, and personal finance management. I think someone asked a question about AI as well, but yeah, we do work on that cutting edge of AI, specifically in ways that ensure that it's compliant from a fintech perspective, as well as offers you the highest precision, as well as most value to your end consumers. I have left my my email ID in the chat box to the panelists, so Ruchi will share it with you. It's ATREYA, Athreya@setu.co, that's CO. But this is a high-level view of what we work on. I'm going to jump next straight into our demo, right? And what I'm going to share with you is a set of links. I think, can you see my whole window, Ruchi? I just want to understand if you can see the URL.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're looking at today right now is a bunch of things that are completely live, as well as accessible in most cases to you as potential FIUs, right? So very quickly, I'm showing you today, what I'm showing you is our docs. So from day one, when you step in and start interacting with Setu, we have a public developer docs portal. We tend to explain to you everything about this, right? So we have a full-fledged account aggregator workflow demo. We'll tell you how consents work, how data fetches work, and then of course, how that fetching actually takes place, right? Apart from that, one of the things we do is we actually explain to you every single consent parameter, right? What are these consent parameters? Like Geeta was showing you earlier in the demo, we actually explain to you each of these consent parameters, what each of them mean, what are the typical values, and then give you a full walkthrough of exactly what that is, right? Apart from this, this is available on docs.setu.co. I'm just gonna share that in the chat box again, which I think can be forwarded further to all participants, right? Now the docs are a precursor to also help you with the bridge. So our dashboard, this is what you're looking at. This is the bridge, is the dashboard for all Setu products. So what I'm going to demo to you today is our FIU submission, and exactly how an FIU can go set up a product with Setu, right? Our job over here was to make the fastest turnaround time for go live, as well as ensuring that you're compliant and able to use this, most effectively. This is the link, bridge.setu.co/V2. Don't forget the V2 if you want to try it out. Our sandbox is free and open to everyone. So you can literally try out doing a high fidelity account aggregator flow as we speak, right? It's simply a matter of going to this link. So here today, what I've done is, of course, I've created an account aggregator product, right? So I've decided I want to set up an account aggregator product. I'm an FIU, right? I'm in the shoes of what you could be, and when you want to use account aggregator, I'm gonna go to configure a product, right? When I want to go configure a product, all I need to do is say, I want to create an FIU product. You'll be given a product ID. You'll be given a bunch of instructions as well as clear steps on how to set this up. Now, part of this that we realized was, of course, Samity has clearly gone and set up a bunch of fair use templates based on the fair use committee, right? So if you're a lender, for example, loan underwriting might be your fair use template or acceptable templates and consent parameters. It might be monitoring. If you're in PFM, it could fall in any of these, so on and so forth. And what we realized is a lot of the actual errors that we see happen when you're sending something like a create consent API. And why is this the case? Very simply, when you're sending a create consent API, often you are going to have to send 15 to 20 parameters, right? Should I send deposit, term deposit, recurring deposit, ETF, equities, SIP, one-time, periodic, transaction, profile, summary. A lot of this is, I would say there's a fairly steep learning curve for this. So one is, like I said, we explain it on this on our docs. Two is, what we decided was, why not templatize this so that your life is made easier? As a lender, your type of data that you need won't change every day, right? It's going to change very few times. In fact, you'll probably only want deposits. You'll probably have a policy of taking 6 months of a statement or 12 months of a statement. And a similar case with which parts of the statement you want. You'll always want to store this data. You'll always have a particular data life or any of these parameters. So what we did is we went and decided, how about we templatize these parameters so that your life is easier and your API to integrate with is much smaller, right? So that's what I mean. And let me show you, right? So I'm setting up an account for easy loans, right? Now, when I'm setting up an account for easy loans, first things first, we give you a full white labeled consent UI and flow, and I will show you how that consent flow looks. We let you customize it according to your brand guidelines, fonts, specific UX nudges, specific new features that allow you to kind of optimize for consent conversion, as well as the context and the type of accounts and the number of accounts you want from a customer, right? I won't spend a lot of time on this. I'm happy to discuss with a lot of you folks one-on-one if you want to go through this easy zero code setup demo, right? And we have web. So this is a white label flow for zero effort. We also have custom UI that's offered to you. Next, what I want to show you is the actual fair use part of this, right? So like I said, why not templatize a lot of this? So very simply, if I'm a lender, can I not simply templatize the purpose code, right? In effect, I'm still sending the same the consent parameters, right? I just don't have to make the effort of it anymore. And we have a full-fledged link to help you understand about purpose codes. If you want to use deposits, you can use deposits. There are also other data types of which you can select multiple depending on your use case. If you were PFM, for example, and also wanted insurance policies, that's okay. We'll let you select multiple. And this is already in the, it'll already be baked into your FIU flows, right? I'm going to stick with deposits for this. I want typically as a lender, all three. I need the transactions, profile, and summary. I'm going to fetch once. Frequency is irrelevant when you're anyway fetching it once, right? And I'm going to store the data for not more than, with a data life of not more than a month, right? For the sake of this, I'm just going to use a dummy redirection link, but I think this is basically where you send your customers to after you approve or reject a consent. So effectively what I've done is instead of asking you to send this fairly massive consent request, I will reduce it to the 3 parameters that actually change every time. Your consent start and expiry, basically your consent duration, your customer's phone number, which of course is specific to each customer, and the actual data range, because you ask for say T minus 6 months, for example, which will constantly change with every request every second, right? So all I do is, as an FIU, all you need to do is save this, right? And once you save this, for example, right, all you need to do is then finish the rest of this. There's a bunch of testing that we allow you to do. So like I said, you can test this product out yourself. We'll give you a client ID secret, a full API package from basically a collection on Postman, which you can actually test these APIs. We also have something called the API Playground, which is available on our docs, right? You can get details for production, your KYC details of your business. I'm going to skip over this. I will stop for questions, but if you do have any questions on these templates, feel free to let me know. This in effect also lets us keep bounded ranges once we see much more solidification of consent templates. And what we plan to do is, one, we can then limit the frequency range. So if, for example, I think in PFM, you don't want to allow more than 45 fetches a month, we can set that upper limit here, right? That is one thing, to actually set bounded ranges. Two, because we've already created a template in effect, what I can do is tomorrow one of the things on our roadmap is very simply, tomorrow we'll have a lending template. So it will autofill all of this for you. And then you can adjust within that bounded range of what is limited and reasonable and set by the fair use committee, right? So this is the customer point of view. This is what you will do, and then you'll submit and go live. I've actually preset another one. So I'm going to go and resubmit this configuration because I don't want you to bore you through the complete details of KYC and so on and so forth, right? So now I've submitted this for review. I'm going to shift to what our onboarding team sees and how they help you, right? So I'm in my admin portal. You'll see a slightly different view. You'll see a KYC module, a pricing module, so on and so forth. And as you can see, it says this particular user has submitted, or this particular FIU has submitted a configuration. So Easy Loans, which was the imaginary FIU that I set up, has set it. And then our onboarding team, who have specific knowledge and in the day-to-day deal with the account aggregator ecosystem, speak to the good folks at Samati, speak to all your all FIUs, and generally have wherewithal on this, will look at this. And in case any particular consent parameter seems excessive, let's say one time it was for a underwriting use case, you sent a recurring fetch. One thing they can do is automatically change it for you on your behalf. But just to inform you, what they can also do is simply reject, right? And what they'll do is they'll say something like, we would like to discuss the consent parameters with you, right? And they can even add the link of the fair use template. I didn't add the link. You as a customer, your onboarding manager or your technical team will get a message, firstly, saying, hey, there are some errors in your submission, we'd like to do it. And we can either have a call and do that back and forth, or our teams will directly contact you immediately or change it for you if we are on a phone call basis, Slack basis, etc. Right? And this is how effectively we can create this. I'm just going to resubmit these changes, right? I'll make an edit. I'll save it. I'll want to kind of try this again, right? So give me 1 second, please. I'll just resubmit this. And as I submit to go live, I can then, of course, if I have fixed all those parameters, my onboarding team will look at this, say this looks great, and potentially mark you as approved and take you live, right? So this is one aspect of it, right? So we actually prevent this at the onboarding levels, just so that all of this is set right at the front. And then you can continuously begin servicing your customers as well as fetching their data for your use case. Second, what I'm actually going to do is then show you what the API looks like. In effect, you do not need to send anything in the consent request, except, for example, the consent duration. So our API has effectively reduced to this, right? You send the consent duration, you send the VUA of the customer, basically the mobile number, right? And since we have a multi-AA gateway, we work with the likes of FinView AA, One Money, Anumati, and a bunch of other AAs as well, Safe, and Setu A, of course, right? You will then be able to, we then route this based on the AAs you've selected, and it's a simple request, right? So effectively, instead of an 18 parameter consent request, you created a 3 parameter consent request. Now, I'm just going to show you what that actually looks like on our API playground. So I created a particular, sorry, I just have to reset my token. Security comes first, of course. Here we go. Please give me 1 second. Ruchi, are we doing good on time? I just want to check.
Yes, that's right. That's
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
All right. So with the same product ID and instance and a bunch of, the key and the secret of these APIs and this particular FIU instance, I have effectively created a sample consent. Our API playground is also a public link. It's api-playground.setu.co, where you can set up your account on the bridge and then actually test these APIs without having a postman as well. Now, with this, I've created a URL, and all of I haven't actually entered any consent parameters here. If you look at it, right? I'll just enter my phone number just so that I can show you a consent flow, right? But even if I were to remove everything here, all of these are optional because they're already set in my dashboard. As you can see, I haven't added things like fetch type, consent type, but it will simply take it from this dashboard, right? What is the data? What is whether it's a periodic fetch, whether it's a single fetch, all of this comes straight from that particular instance. Now I open up sorry about that. I will open up a particular consent link and it will show up with the same parameters, right? Sorry, I'm just gonna. Oh, are you able to see this?
Yes. The OTP is sent to this number. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, for those who wish to contact me directly, this is my phone number. But here I will log in. Very simply, I log in and I will then effectively see all my consent parameters as per what I've set up. I can then choose a bunch of FIUs and then approve this consent, right? So I will get an OTP for this, right? I approve this. All my consent parameters are here. This is, of course, for that loan. And once I approve this data sharing, it will then allow you to fetch data. So that's a quick summary of all that we have. So I think Ruchi has already shared the docs link as well as the link to our dashboard, our API playground. Let me just share that link. Thanks so much, Ruchi. And I think I showed you all of that. We also have a Postman collection in case you ever need to use that. All of this is available freely. Feel free to contact us. I put my ID, but you can also contact sales@setu.co and setu.co. So I think, in effect, just to summarize, we have these templates. Our next step is, of course, we will create these templates in a manner that allows us to give bounded ranges based on these the fair use templates set by the fair use committee. And in the future, we can also allow this to directly be validated in case there is any other infra level fair use implementations. Any questions? I'll just check the Q&A.
Yeah. Are you able to access the Q&A?
Yeah, I'm able to see it. I think there is a startup, Sanatana, Mr. Venkat. Mr. Venkat, I'm happy to, I think my email ID is in the chat. Happy to have a chat about all our solutions in fintech and lending. We work fairly well in this, but just in the interest of time and the fair use demo, I'll stick to that for now, but happy to chat over email. There is an anonymous entity attendee who says the FIO experience is disrupted and business operations are impacted when an FIP denies data, right? I'll take this question and also probably defer some part of it to Ruchi, right? Um, there are certain parameters where you face denials, right? What we also do is the other reason we want to do this along with our onboarding team, and I showed you our onboarding team and how they have a back and forth with you, is so that this is never disrupted. We will give you a list of best practices, right, in terms of what parameters you should have. We will give you a list of places where we have noticed slightly higher failures. We will also put you in a liaison with the FIP, with Samati, in case you face issues in your use case. So if you ever have a new use case, right? Like if you ever have completely new parameters for a new use case on AA, we're happy. We constantly liaise you with the fair use team. We'll put you on an email thread. Then we'll have a bunch of calls where we first enable this use case in the ecosystem. And two, in case FIPs are still not able to service this, we'll actually create a line of communication with that FIP so that these problems are solved, right? I think typically this takes a bit of dialogue, and but I have seen it being solved multiple times over. I can assure you of that. Ruchi, do you want to add anything else to this?
I don't know where this question is. I don't know why I can't see it.
Oh, I think I was reading some other open anonymous
Right. I
Yeah,
don't know.
sorry.
It's not there. Nonetheless, I would say, if there are any questions around fair use and specific to what was asked, please get in touch with us at info@Sehmati,
Yeah.
because we have one more question for you, Atreya. So it's best that you take that out.
Yeah, there's another anonymous attendee who says, from a developer POV, for any lending solution, just call Setu Lending API, get the response, build on our UI. Not the lending API, but yes, our account aggregation APIs and insights APIs. They are two separate APIs because you may also, one is you want to use account aggregator to fetch the data. And that is something that you need to be a financially regulated entity, basically a regulated entity to onboard onto the ecosystem. And then, of course, fetch your data and use it for insights. But yes, we do also offer custom UI options. That is something that's completely available for you. I hope that answers your question. So Mr. Venkat, I think Samity is the convener of this ecosystem. They've built a lot of the support infrastructure. They run the guidelines, and they have also brought this ecosystem together. I believe it is probably the biggest source of value in terms of enabling this ecosystem. We are a particular technical service provider. We have a associated entity that is on the inside, we have that is related on the account aggregator side, but that is completely separate from our operations. It's called Setu Account Aggregator. And then there's a TSP entity which works on a lot of what you just saw, right? Which is enabling lending, enabling personal finance management, and other types of use cases. I hope that answers what the value is from each of these players. But I will also let the Samity team address the question separately. Mr. Harichandana Vikram has asked if it's manual verification. Not particularly. There are parts of it where our onboarding team manages it and actually approves it. Yes, if that's the question, yes, a human actually approves your template, but every consent request after that is automatic. It is based on the APIs you set up. Second, we also have features related to how we can make fetching of your data and your data operations easier. So the number of requests we get per day is several lakh, but the coming back to what you are specifically asking on the number of onboardings per day, we onboard a few financial services entities every week, and it's never been a problem, right? Our TAT has been superb. And I would say, you're able to go live in very short amounts of time. So I don't think it's a bottleneck. We have an on-call onboarding team for you. Okay, if no other questions, I think I'm good. And I think thank you everyone for the opportunity to present.
Great. Thanks a lot, Atreya. I think right now there are no more questions, and I have posted all the links and all the email IDs that you had shared with me to the audience. So please feel free to get in touch with Team Setu. And we're so much on time. It's amazing that we're bang on time. Thank you so much, everybody. Please reach out to us for any questions on fair use and other questions also that have come around use cases around lending, fintech. Please reach out to us at info@Sehmati. Reach out to FinFactor and Setu for their product specific questions as well. And that brings us to the end of the last Pragati session of the calendar year 2024. I leave you all to have a great evening and a very good festive season. Thanks so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah.